Why married men chase women like you, the psychological trap Carl Jung. Have you ever noticed how certain married men seem magnetized by you, while others barely notice your presence? It's not about physical beauty, it's not about seduction. It is something much deeper and more disturbing that Carl Jung discovered by studying the male unconscious. There is an invisible psychological trap that you may be activating without realizing it. And when that happens, married men begin to orbit your life as if you were their center of gravity. They call more than they should, show up where you are, make excuses to talk, and you ask yourself, why me? The answer will shock you. Jung identified that certain female profiles awaken in married men a psychological hunger that he did not even know he had. A need so primitive that it overrides any rational commitment. In this video, I'm going to reveal exactly what unconscious mechanism you're activating in him and why it can destroy both your life and his. 1. The shadow he hides from his wife. Every man carries within himself a dark part that he never shows to anyone. It is that side full of desires, impulses, and aspects of the personality that have been repressed since childhood. When he gets married, that part doesn't disappear. She is still there, pulsating, demanding attention, but he buries her deep because he needs to maintain the image of a responsible husband, provider, family man. With his wife, he has built a version of himself over the years. She meets the man who pays the bills, who solves problems, who is predictable, but there is another man inside, one he doesn't always conscientiously recognize. This other man is hungry for spontaneity, for emotional adventure, to feel alive in a way that the marital routine no longer allows. When you show up in his life, something extraordinary happens. You don't carry the weight of years of expectations, bills to pay, arguments about who will pick up the kids from school. You represent a virgin psychological space where he can project this dark part of himself without fear of judgment. And the most fascinating thing is that this happens completely unconsciously. You don't need to do anything at all to activate this. It just exists as a possibility. His presence works as a mirror where he finally sees reflected that man he would like to be, but has never been able to show at home. The spontaneous, funny, seductive man, free of obligations. With you, he doesn't have to hide his flaws because you don't know them yet. You don't have to pretend to be strong when you're weak because you don't have a history of mutual demands. His wife sees his shadow too, but over the years she has learned to criticize it, to try to correct it, to show how those impulses are inadequate. You, on the other hand, haven't done that yet, and he interprets his neutrality as total acceptance. That's why he goes after it. It's not about you being better. It's about you being the only place where he can release that part of himself that lives imprisoned. 2. The void you fill without knowing it. There's an emotional hole inside every married man that he didn't even know he had until you came along. For years he worked on autopilot, fulfilling roles, following routines, being what everyone expected him to be. And in that process, something inside him slowly died. The feeling of being wanted, of being seen as someone special, of provoking butterflies in someone's stomach. In marriage, especially after a few years, he became emotionally invisible. His wife loves him, but she no longer sees him with that sparkle in her eyes. It is part of the home furnishings, necessary but not noticed. No one looks at him and thinks he's fascinating. No one waits anxiously for a message from him. He became the provider, the faucet repairman, the father of the children. Useful but not desirable. When you laugh at a joke of his with genuine surprise, when you show real interest in what he says, when your eyes light up at the sight of him, you are filling a void that he thought was a natural part of growing old. Suddenly he discovers that no, he wasn't dead inside. It was just asleep, and you woke him up without even realizing it. The danger here is devastating. He begins to associate you with the feeling of being alive again. Your brain creates a powerful chemical link between your presence and the release of dopamine. Every interaction with you becomes an addiction because it takes you out of that state of emotional anesthesia that has become your married life. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just being yourself, but for him, that's like pure oxygen after years of breathing thin air. And the more he feels that contrast, the more desperate he is to keep you close. Because coming home after feeling this is like going back to a cell after experiencing freedom. The void you filled now seems 1,000 times greater when you are not present. If you want to understand why married men are drawn to you and how to break that psychological trap for good, go to the Jung method. It shows you how to shift your energy so you only attract emotionally available men. The link is pinned in the first comment. 3. The projection of the ideal woman. Inside every man's mind, there is a feminine image that he has built since he was a child. This image was shaped by movies, music, by his mother, by his first crush, by all the emotional experiences that marked his formation. She is the perfect woman who exists only in his psychological world, and he spends his whole life looking for it in the external reality. When he got married, he probably believed he had found this woman. But over time, the reality of everyday life dismantled the fantasy. His wife turned out to be human with defects, mood swings, her own needs that do not always match his. The idealized image has been replaced by a real person, and this is inevitable in any long-term relationship. The problem is that the image never dies. It just lies dormant in the unconscious, waiting for the right opportunity to resurface. And then you appear. You're still a mystery to him. He doesn't know his annoying quirks, his bad days, his deep insecurities. You are a blank canvas where he can reproject that ideal woman who lives in his head. His every gesture is interpreted through this distorted lens. If you are kind, he sees the perfect woman who always understands him. If you are independent, he sees the ideal partner who does not suffocate. If you smile, he sees the joy that is missing at home. None of this is real. It's all projection. But for him it seems absolutely true because finally that image has gained a concrete face. This trap is cruel to both you and him. Because the man who's running after you isn't really seeing you. He's chasing a ghost that his mind has created and pasted on top of his image. When reality inevitably appears, when you show that you are also human, it will collapse. But as long as the projection lasts, nothing the wife does will compete with the imaginary perfection he sees in you. Diastiti 4, because he feels like he can be himself with you. There is a psychological freedom that you offer without even realizing it. With his wife, every word he says has gone through years of interpretation and history. If he says he's tired, it's not just about being tired. It's about that time he used tiredness as an excuse not to help around the house. It's about the pattern of behavior that she's already identified. Everything carries accumulated emotional weight. But with you, it's different. When he says something, that's just what he said. No layers of interpretation, no history of grievances, no identified patterns. It can be spontaneous because there is no mental database analyzing everything that comes out of its mouth. This lightness is intoxicating for someone who has been walking on emotional eggshells for years. The social mask he needs to keep at home can finally fall off when he's around you. Not because you're special, but because you don't have pre-established expectations about who he should be. The wife expects him to be strong when she is weak. Expect him to solve problems. He hopes that he will be the safe haven. With you, he can simply exist without having to play a role. This sense of authenticity is extremely seductive. For the first time in a long time, he feels that someone is getting to know who he really is, not the role he plays. Of course, this is also an illusion, because he's only showing you the best angles of himself, but his perception is one of emotional liberation. What he doesn't understand is that this authenticity only exists because the relationship has no real depth. It's easy to be authentic when there are no consequences. It's easy to be vulnerable when the other person doesn't depend on your strength. It's easy to be light when there are no bills to pay together, no kids to raise together, no real problems to solve together. But he confuses this lightness with genuine connection, and that's why he continues to run after that feeling that only you seem to provide. 5. The illusion of emotional rebirth. When a married man approaches you in this obsessive way, he is secretly seeking a second chance at life. Inside it, there is a sense that something has died over the years. The spontaneity, the passion, the sense of infinite possibilities that he had in his youth. Looking in the mirror has become a reminder that time is passing, that maybe he has chosen the wrong life, that he is stuck in an existence that no longer moves him. You represent the possibility of rebirth, not a literal restart, but the chance to feel again those emotions that define being truly alive. When he's close to you, the years disappear. He feels young, interesting, full of potential again. You function as an emotional time machine that transports you to a version of yourself that he believed he had lost forever. This feeling is so powerful that it begins to confuse you with the solution to all your existential problems. If he's unhappy at work, it suddenly seems like having you around would solve it. If he's feeling old and irrelevant, his fresh, youthful attention makes him believe he still has value. You become the answer to questions that aren't even about you. His brain creates a seductive narrative where dropping everything and staying with you would mean regaining the life he let slip away. It's a rebirth fantasy that feels absolutely real because the feelings are genuine. He really feels more alive, really feel that adrenaline rush. Truly believe that you are the key to a more authentic existence. But this is a devastating psychological illusion. What he's feeling isn't love for you. It is nostalgia for youth, despair for the passage of time, terror in the face of a life that seems to have ended emotionally. You just had the misfortune to be available when this existential crisis erupted within him. And now he pursues you with the intensity of someone who believes he is pursuing his own salvation. Escapism 6. The conflict between duty and unconscious desire. There is a silent war going on inside it, and you are the battlefield. On one side is everything he consciously built: marriage, family, responsibilities, social image, commitments made. On the other side is this primitive and uncontrollable desire that you have awakened in him unintentionally. And these two sides are tearing each other apart. The conscious part of him knows that he is wrong. He knows that he should keep his distance, that he is betraying his wife's trust, that he is putting everything at risk for a fantasy. But the unconscious part doesn't care about morals or consequences. It operates on a much more primitive level, where all that matters is to satisfy that emotional hunger that has suddenly woken up after years of dormancy. This internal conflict explains why his behavior seems so erratic. One day he is completely involved, looking for you, showing intense interest. The next day he disappears, moves away, acts as if nothing had happened. It is not calculated manipulation. It's the result of two opposing forces fighting for control of his mind. When desire wins, it runs towards you. When guilt wins, he retreats. What makes this even more complicated is that both sides have legitimate arguments. Duty represents years of history, real commitments, people who depend on it. Desire represents deep emotional needs that have been ignored for so long that they have now exploded with uncontrollable force. There is no simple answer, and he is stuck in this devastating psychological limbo. You end up becoming the symbol of this battle. Every time he sees you, the conflict intensifies. Being close to you fuels the desire, but increases the guilt. Being away from you calms the conscience, but intensifies the feeling of emptiness. It is lost in an emotional labyrinth with no apparent way out, and the longer it lasts, the more destructive it becomes for everyone involved, especially for you who are in the center without having asked to be. 7. When you become the fantasy of escape, his life became an emotional prison. Not because the wife is bad or the marriage is terrible, but because routine has killed any trace of unpredictability. He knows exactly what each day will be like for the next 20 years. He wakes up at the same time, goes to the same job, comes back to the same house, has the same conversations, sleeps on the same side of the bed. The predictability that was supposed to bring comfort has become a perpetual sentence of boredom. In this context, you represent the exit gate, not necessarily a real way out, but the fantasy that there is a different world possible beyond those four walls. When he thinks about you, he can breathe for a few minutes. Can you imagine a life where things are light, spontaneous, full of possibilities? You became the main character of the alternate history that he tells himself to be able to endure the current reality. Every time married life gets too heavy, he mentally runs away to you. Argument with the wife. He imagines how different it would be if he were with you. Problem at work? Fantasize about dropping everything and starting over by your side. Sleepless night? Think about what it would be like to wake up every day seeing your face. You've become the emotional outlet that keeps it going. The danger here is that this fantasy is becoming more and more elaborate and less connected with reality. In his mind, you are not a real person with flaws and complexities. You are the protagonist of a movie where everything is perfect, where there are no bills to pay, mothers-in-law to put up with, children crying at dawn. It is a fantasy world where there is only passion, understanding, and eternal lightness. And the longer he lives in this fantasy, the harder it becomes to differentiate between what is real and what is imagination. He begins to genuinely believe that life by his side would be this wonder he has built in his head. He does not realize that he is comparing the harsh reality of marriage to a perfect fantasy that has no basis in real life. You've become the embodiment of all of his unfulfilled dreams, and that makes him absolutely blind to who you really are. 8. The brutal truth that no one tells you. Now comes the part that hurts, but that you need to hear. None of this is really about you. It may seem so. It seems that he has chosen you specifically, that there is something unique and special between you, that what he feels is genuine and profound. But the truth is, you could be almost anyone, any woman who showed up at the right time, representing what is missing in his life, would activate exactly the same response. You are a psychological mirror, not a real partner. He is projecting onto this smooth surface everything he needs to see to feel alive again. If it weren't for you, it would be the co-worker, the neighbor, the wife's friend. The mechanism is the same. His emotional hunger does not choose a specific target. She just looks for any available food source, and when that truth finally comes out, it can happen in two ways. First, if he really drops everything for you, reality will destroy the fantasy in a matter of months. As soon as you face real problems together, as soon as the novelty wears off, as soon as you show that you also have flaws and bad days, he will wake up from the trance. And then you will start looking for the next woman to project the fantasy, because the problem was never with the wife or with you. The problem has always been internal. Second, if he never leaves his wife, you'll spend years being the emotional lover. The second option, the one he runs to when he needs to, but never comes out publicly. You will live in the shadows of his life, feeding a dynamic that only takes from you and never gives anything real in return. His youth, his emotional energy, his chances of finding something genuine will be consumed by keeping alive the fantasy of escape of a man who doesn't have the courage to face his own inner demons. The brutal truth is that you deserve someone who really sees you, not someone who is using your image to plug the emotional holes that should be solved with therapy and inner work. You deserve someone free to choose you completely, not someone torn between duty and desire. And above all, you deserve to understand that when a married man runs after you in this obsessive way, it is not a compliment to your uniqueness. It is a symptom of his existential crisis. You just had the misfortune to be present when the bomb exploded. And now you must decide whether you will continue in the radius of destruction or whether you will walk away before it is too late.